Dear all, welcome to CCG Dialogue Series, today in collaboration with Synergia Foundation. Today's webinar, China-India Complex Interdependence in a Rising Asia, proudly presents experts from both countries to tackle some of the most vital questions with implications beyond China and India, and help bridge existing gaps of trust and cooperation. A brief background into the topic: since the outbreak of COVID-19 pandemic and border clashes in May 2020, China and India have entered a new phase of complex interdependence and mistrust, but also deepening and diversifying cooperation. Today, the two Asian giants, accounting for over 1/3 of the world's population, have attained new heights in bilateral trade and spearhead multilateralism as members of BRICS, G20, the Asian Infrastructure Investment Bank, and the Shanghai Cooperation Organization, among others. Yet, India's membership of the Quadrilateral Group, the Quad, and recently the Indo-Pacific Economic Forum, as well as a series of bans on Chinese telecom giants, have aroused misapprehensions in Beijing. Simultaneously, China's enhanced engagement in South Asia and existing border tensions have served to caution decision makers in New Delhi. However, amidst both these developments, Beijing and New Delhi's firm stance against bloc politics amidst the Ukraine crisis, as well as the upcoming face-to-face meetings between President Xi and Prime Minister Modi, a new opportunity to revive the Wuhan spirit may be in the horizon. In light of these developments, how can China and India address existing misunderstandings to the benefit of economic cooperation and pragmatic domestic goals in the short as well as medium term? What is India's emerging role in the Indo-Pacific Economic Forum in the Asia-Pacific region? How can India and China emerge as partners in China's proposed global development and global security initiatives? What are the prospects and potential mutual gains for a possible Pacific dialogue on economic and regional cooperation that includes both China, India, as well as key regional stakeholders? And lastly, how can the role of academic, cultural, and people-to-people exchanges towards bridging these existing trust deficit be enhanced? These are some of the core questions we will be addressing today, and we are pleased to be joined for welcoming remarks, our partners from the Synergia Foundation, keynote speakers, former Ambassador of India to China, Ambassador Gautam Bambewale, the President for Center of China and Globalization and Director, Chinese People's Institute of Foreign Affairs, Dr. Henry Hoya Wang. And for our panelists, lead discussants, we have Senior Colonel Joe Bo, Senior Fellow at Center for International Security and Strategy, Tsinghua University, General Mani Chandi, Chief Strategy Officer, Synergia Foundation, Chen Fang, Director of Research and Development and Senior Research Fellow, National Strategy Institute, Tsinghua University, Shrikant Kondepalli, Professor of Jawaharlal Nehru University, New Delhi. And the format will be first our opening remarks, then we welcome both our keynote speakers, and then the floor will be open to our interventionists or experts on both sides. As viewers on all of our social media platforms, please feel free to ask questions, and we will make sure that we have an engaging interactive towards the end of the discussion. So now, without further ado, let us welcome Ms. Sambrata Chetty, who is Chief Operating Officer of Synergia Foundation, for welcoming remarks. Welcome.
Thank you, Zoon. Thank you, and good morning, everyone. On behalf of Mr. Simon, who's unwell today, I'm honored to share my welcome remarks. Let me briefly introduce Synergia Foundation. We are a strategic think tank based in Bangalore, India, that works at the confluence of technology, economics, and security. And what makes us different from most other think tanks is that we've remained truly independent, non-partisan since our inception in 1990. Today, we are gathered here to discuss the ambit and depth of the growing partnership between India and China. As Asia's largest and most rapidly rising powers in contemporary global politics, relations between India and China are becoming ever more intertwined with each other. Both nations share a common history of civilization, inclusive of viewing the colonial intervention in a negative light as they try to take away the individual culture, tradition, and outlooks of India and China. The leaders of the two South Asian nations seek to establish their importance in the international arena, at the same time assert their social, political, military dominance in order to become more influential figures in the sphere of global diplomacy. The 7 decades of Indo-China relationship has witnessed various matters of cooperation and contemplation. New Delhi, since the last 10 years, has been observing the enormous growth of Beijing trade and economic expansion. A collective adherence to modernization and developmental policies also galvanizes the two countries together. Despite these strong positive overlaps in relation, ties between India and China are strained by a host of negative elements. A series of attempts have been made by both the sides to bridge the differences, and the matters are not only limited to the long-standing territorial disputes that have been further intensified by historical and more contemporary issues, but also the other challenges that have been noted are more competitive global markets between the two sides as they aim for influence, power, hegemony, and profits. Now, as a result, Indo-China relations can be seen as representing a double-edged sword. At the same time, one should not come to a conclusion that both India and China have always been at loggerheads. Elements of their interactions can be regarded as having concurrent benefits and liabilities. And the scope and scale of these benefits and liabilities are ever more accumulating in nature. Now, one should view the outcomes of long-standing debates between Indo-China through an optimistic lens. As a think tank, the responsibility of understanding the partnership and rivalries between these two rapidly progressing states is of paramount importance. Forums like these give us a better insight on the interventions and impact of our current decision on future of global security and mutual coordination. So I'm looking forward to hear insights from all the distinguished panelists present here today. Over to you, Zoom. Thank you.
Thank you so much. That was our opening remarks by Ms. Samrata Shetty, Chief Operating Officer of Synergia Foundation. Now, let me invite as our 2 keynote speakers. Firstly, we'll invite Ambassador Gautam Bambewala. A brief introduction. He is former ambassador of India to China. He worked in the Indian between 1984 to 2018. He has been India's ambassador to Bhutan, Pakistan, and China. He has headed the Indian Cultural Center in Berlin and was stationed in Washington, D.C. during the Indo-US nuclear deal. He has worked at the Prime Minister's office as well and has 17 years of experience dealing with China in various capacities and is fluent in Chinese and German. He has an MPhil in economics from the Gokhale Institute of Politics and Economics, Pune. The floor is yours, Ambassador.
Yeah, I don't know if you can hear me. Please confirm whether you can hear me.
We can hear you.
Because I'm in a very remote part of India, in central India, on a few days of vacation, but I was very keen to be able to participate with all of you. And I do hope you hear me, the connect little saying, it's a pleasure to be old friends. Henry Wang is someone whom I've met many years ago, and Senior Colonel Chaubo, as well as Professor Chien Feng, friends whom I have known for many years. And I think it's excellent that India and China can continue to have communication with each other, even when the political situation is a little difficult. I'm also very happy and thankful to Synergia Foundation for this opportunity. And I'm delighted to see my old friend from JNU, Professor Kondapalli. Let me start by saying that unfortunately, the events of 2020, April and May, have breached some of the trust which was built up between India and China for a very long time, starting as far back as 1976, and then over the decades right up till 2020. The spirit of Wuhan and then Chennai, which saw the informal summits between Minister and are unfortunately broken by military of 2020 when these events that took place on our border in what we call Eastern Ladakh. So I guess we have to start from there. What we need to be doing when we talk about how India and China move forward, I think, is we need to rebuild the understanding which existed continues today and confident that conversations like having to trust. Of course, it also needs to expand to conversations between, but I believe that
I think Ambassador Pandewale may have gotten disconnected. Our technical team will ensure that we can connect with him. Yes, Ambassador, can you hear us?
You can hear me now again.
We can hear you, yes.
Sorry, I can hear you. Thank you. Sorry about that. It's a little up and down from this remote part of central India. So I think we need to rebuild that trust, and we can only do that, I believe, one, by restoring the status quo ante our border areas, two, by continuing to talk to each other like we are doing today, and therefore I welcome this opportunity. You will see, my friends from China, that India has not taken any predetermined steps. We have ensured that trade and investment between our two countries continue earlier, and therefore, in 2021, we have had the highest trade level between our two countries. You will also see that we have continued to work with countries in organizations like BRICS and the Shanghai Cooperation Organization. So we continue to work with China, with Russia in the SCO as well as in BRICS, and we have not, thought of cutting our ties with those very important organizations. So I believe that India has taken a very practical approach to our relations with China. But at the same time, we have no doubt at all, and I think none of us have any doubt, that there is a lack of trust between our two countries which needs to be repaired, and that can only be done slowly over a period of time with conversations like this, but also extending to governments. But let me also say that as far as India is concerned, it is very difficult to divorce the situation on the border from the rest of the relationship. In fact, that will not happen. As far as we are concerned, there is no division between the border and the rest of the relationship, and therefore we will have to ensure that there is peace and tranquility on the border if the rest of the relationship has to move ahead to build further trust and understanding between our two countries. Let me also say that the way to build trust will be to show militarily that there is a desire for disengagement and de-escalation on our borders, because that is not good for either India or for China. It is not good to keep large numbers of troops in close proximity to each other on the border in India's north and in China's Xinjiang province. So as we move ahead, I believe that it's important to each other, and therefore myself that I have opportunity to speak to many of my friends in China. But at the same time, my message to all of you, Director Wang, as well as Senior Colonel Chaubo and Professor Chien Feng, is that we all need to work very hard to restore the trust which was broken by the events which happened on our border in June of 2020, where several of our military soldiers on both sides died in the process. So let me, because of the bad connectivity, I want to bring my remarks to a close, Zoom, and hold hand. I can hear all of you clearly. I do hope that you were able to hear me, but I'd like to once again highlight my message that there is a severe lack of trust between our two countries at this point of time. The work of several decades was washed away, and what happened on our border was a very important turning point or an inflection point. India has taken a very practical approach to India-China relations. We have kept the rest of the relationship reasonably steady. But at the same time, let me say that events on the border will impact the rest of the relationship, and it could deteriorate if we don't, all of us, work hard together to rebuild the trust which existed before 2020. I'm going to stop there and hand it back to you, Zoom. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Ambassador Bambewale. I hope you can hear us clearly, and your keynote, we understood exactly. I mean, there was a bit of a connectivity issue in the middle, but your message is clear, and especially, I think I will just repeat that you highlighted the importance of addressing the core outstanding issues so that the rest of the relationship is not affected, not impacted in a negative way, and how conversations like these, we hope that the conversation that proceeds can really contribute to practical solutions that can help address the gaps, mistrust, and further build avenues for cooperation. Thank you so much, Ambassador, for the keynote speech. Let me briefly introduce President of the Center for China and Globalization, Dr. Hoya Wang. He is Vice Chairman of China Association for International Economic Cooperation under the Ministry of Commerce, President of China Global Talent Society, the Ministry of Human Resources and Social Security, and Vice Chairman of China Public Relations Association, a Director of Chinese People's Institute of Foreign Affairs, and a Director of China National Committee for Pacific Economic Cooperation, both organizations of Advisory Committee of the Center for Global Competence Development, Tsinghua University, and a steering committee member of Paris Peace Forum and Metropolis International. He also sits on the advisory board of Duke Kunshan University and Richard Ivey Business School. He was a senior fellow at Harvard University, at Harvard Kennedy School, and a visiting fellow at the Brookings Institution. He has taught at Peking University, Tsinghua University, Richard Ivey Business School as an adjunct professor, and authored and edited nearly 100 books in English as well as Chinese on global relations, global governance, global migration, China outbound and inbound investment and trade, Chinese diasporas, and Chinese think tanks. Dr. Hoya Wang, the floor is yours for opening remarks.
Okay, thank you, Zoom, and Ambassador Bambewale, and distinguished India colleagues, and also my Chinese colleagues. So good afternoon, good morning, and depends where we are. But I'm really pleased and echo our friends from Synergy Foundation that this is really a great event that we co-host this, and really to show our think tank exchanges are really happening, and but also to try to promote a better understanding, and also at this also difficult and challenging time that we are finding some dialogue, as Ambassador mentioned, and also trying to seek a common understanding and maximize the similarities and minimize the difference. So this is really great, and I want to thank my friend Simon Toby as well. So this is a great event. I would like to say that as we have actually did that in the past with Synergy Foundation, we've done a few times on China-Indian cooperation seminar symposium. I mean, last time I remember Ambassador Rao was speaking, and also Ambassador Sun Yishi from China was speaking. So we had that dialogue a year or two ago, and when the pandemic started, actually. But now we're very, very important that we're trying to get into this kind of dialogue again, and Center for China Globalization as the leading non-government think tank, and one of the top 100 think tanks in the world. We are really pleased to leading this dialogue. So what I would like to say first that of course China and India are two oldest civilizations in the world. We share a lot of similarities. I remember when I was a child, we know that the first Chinese returnees, Xuan Zhuang, actually went to India and and also brought the Buddhism back to China. So we had a lot of good influence in Asian time. So nowadays, the globalization is really facing tremendous challenges and also crisis now actually. And so I believe that the two countries, were the two largest developing country, should really take advantage of our Asian civilizations, but also to jointly contribute to the wisdom and bring the dynamics and the solutions to the world in turmoil. So this is really the right time we have this dialogue. So despite the ups and downs, I mean, in the recent years of bilateral Indian-China relations, I think India and China and China and India, of course, can find some common ground in the following area that I can highlight a few. First, in terms of development, China and India are the second and the seventh biggest economy in the world in 2021. And India, of course, is projected to be the third largest economy within the next 2 decades probably. And India is supposed to surpass Japan and become the third largest economy in a decade. So that's really impressive. And both sides are really should explore the potentials if we collaborate and if we build up this biggest market in the world, and particularly on the trade and investment. For instance, China and India have built a strong partnership on AIB, and the largest recipient of AIB loans are India, actually. So now India is the largest borrower to the AIB, as a matter of fact. And so not to mention that India is also the co-founder of the new development bank, along with China, among the BRICS countries. So the two-way trade volume of our two countries, reached 1,256 billion. So it's actually 43% growth year on year. So there's a tremendous growth there. So that's number one. I think economically we cannot lose the sight. We really have to collaborate because the world is in a pandemic and also high inflation and all those crises that and India and China really can work together. Second, geopolitically, China and India have a strong shared attitude towards many international views and also have the similar objectives. The peaceful, for example, the peaceful settlement of the Russian-Ukraine crisis, promoted the sustainable development of the emerging market, underpinning non-aligned movement, and build a fair international order, etc. So China actually and India are two major stakeholders of BRICS, which can also be enlarged as time goes on. So the two members of the Shanghai Cooperation Organization have also built closer relations in those regional arrangements, but also we also can work very closely in WTO, in UN, and many other multilateral institutions. And thirdly, of course, in recent years and particularly recent months, we see there's good signs released by the two sides to defuse the border clashes, the conflict we used to have, particularly after the new round of a China-India Corps commander level meeting in July this year. So this is fairly recent, and hopefully the two sides can settle the dispute peacefully, not only on the border issues, but also on the general security issues. Of course, security is one of the major concerns highlighted in the bilateral relation, given we are living in a turbulent world and where there are always disputes, disasters, and decouplings. We need to stabilize our relations so as to address various challenges and also decoupling tendencies that represented in other areas, also represented by other countries. So we actually have to work together. We should not decouple as two largest economy, developing country. Now we have a lot of similarities. Fourthly, I think that as the two largest economy, developing countries, China and India can also work together to take the globalization and global development into a new phase. for example, infrastructure development, urbanization, digital economy, and e-commerce, and of course, environment, sustainable development. There's so much in common, China and India. I mean, we share the same challenges. We share the same magnitude and size and degree of the issues. We have so much in common. We can really learn from each other and help each other. And also the booming digital economy between China and India also can be really a great way to work together. And India is very strong on some of the software development, on the subcontracting, and all those areas. So we have a lot of areas to collaborate in further in the future. And finally, I think that the two countries are also working together, have the service sectors. Those countries are the most populated countries in the world. I mean, I was glad to see India now probably going to take over now as the largest, the most populous country in the world. I mean, I read somewhere that China, India, if not already, is catching up China very soon in terms of the population size. So this is very, very good news that we those countries, we have 2.8 billion people in the world. That's a big chunk of the world population. So I think the people-to-people communications, people-to-people exchanges, and tourism and service sectors, e-commerce and digital economy are really the key areas. So the area that we can collaborate. So I think that and also student exchanges, can be very important as well. We encourage more Chinese students to go to India and have more Indian students coming to China, so we can build up the really the better understanding for the next generation of our two countries, and we can really be a great countries to work together. So I agree with Ambassador Bob Wally that we have been doing so well since mid 60s and until recent years. We have some ups and downs, but we also had President Xi and President Moody actually had this Wuhan conference spirit. We have so much things in common. So let's work together at the G20, at BRICS, at all the other multilateral platform and SCO and thing else. So again, I really thank the opportunity that we can co-host this with the Synergy Foundation, and also I'll be very pleased to hear our colleagues from India and China to this really timely and much expected discussion. Thank you very much.
Thank you. That was Dr. Huiyao Wang, President of the Center for China and Globalization, with his keynote remarks. And I'll briefly mention some of the points that he highlighted, including the historic relationship, how really it was from India that Buddhism entered China. So the two of the most ancient civilizations in the world have a deep history of coexistence. And today we also see that there are many similarities, similar ways, for instance, in terms of economic collaborations, also globalization and global development, and how the role of the global south and developing countries is generally emerging, and India and China seem to be on the same side. So the positives of how the relation can emerge moving forward if we focus on what we have in common and continue the dialogue to be able to address the existing misunderstandings. Thank you so much, Dr. Wang. And now let's move forward. We have our 4 experts, 2 from India and 2 from China, and we will be discussing further go into more depth of the topic for today. So let me firstly welcome our first panelist, our first expert, who is Senior Colonel Zhou Bo. He is a senior fellow at the Center for International Security and Strategy at Tsinghua University. He started his military service in 1979, served in different posts in Guangzhou Air Force Regional Command. From 1993, he worked successively as Staff Officer, Deputy Director General of West Asia and Africa Bureau, and then Deputy Director General of General Planning Bureau of the Foreign Affairs Office of the Ministry of National Defense of China, as well as Chinese Defense Attaché to the Republic of Namibia and Director of the Center for Security Cooperation in the Office for International Military Cooperation, Ministry of National Defense. Our expert, Senior Fellow Zhou Bo, has published more than 100 essays and opinions in key publications, including Foreign Affairs, Foreign Policy, among various others. And he is also a speaker as a PLA delegate at Shangri-La Dialogue in Singapore and at Munich Security Conference. He is supervisor to foreign postgraduate officers at PLA National Defense University. Professor Joe Bo, the floor is yours.
Yeah. So, thank you, June, for such a lengthy introduction about myself. I think it's a waste of too much time of everybody. But let me come straight to the remarks of Ambassador Bambawali, and I just try my best to be more focused. First of all, since the border issue is India's primary concern, let me just say a few things which I probably have said before. First of all, I think it is very, very important for the Indian side to understand that China didn't pre-plan sudden attack on India. This is very, very important for you to understand, because if you consider and believe that China actually has pre-planned such a kind of attack, then it will change your psyche, your mindset. So the whole thing's plot would be totally seen in different light. I tell you why this is not possible, because while China is being taken by the United States as a primary competitor, and China is just going to the top of the mountain, trekking along the mountain, there is no need whatsoever for China to suddenly focus on India in such a way, not a sudden attack. Yeah, so it doesn't make any sense. So use your brain, think for a moment. Then how to solve this problem? I believe that first, to resolve the border issue is simply impossible due to different considerations and the political strains in our two countries. But we can at least manage, we're doing, to deconflict from the most dangerous area. And I believe that this is really fruitful, that we only have a few minor points where we actually stand vis-a-vis each other. So we should keep this momentum. And I believe that from all what I heard, the atmosphere is positive. And so then if we succeed in conflicting some of these points, what should we do in the future? I look at all the confidence building measures from 1993 to 2003. And I would say with confidence that all the confidence building measures between China and India is actually more than China's confidence building measure with any other countries. They are not only a large in number, but also very detailed in terms of all the substantive measures to follow. For example, how not to aircraft to fly within 10 kilometers of the line of action control, or not to follow the others. Otherwise, they are patrolling. They're so detailed. Then, if we come down and try to implement all the confidence building measures, I have to say that most of the measures are already there. Actually, we have failed to implement some of these measures. But last time in one of the bilateral talks, General Huda, retired General Huda, mentioned that there should be something new, which I thought and then agreed, because there is a massing of troops on either side. Therefore, we probably should have some new measures. And I feel once we withdraw from the heavily masked border, then both sides could actually figure out what to do. Then Ambassador Bambawali also talked about, well, let me say a few words more. Well, it's most unfortunate for us to see, the cavity 20 on Indian side or on Chinese side in the last 40 years and plus. But I believe if we really could draw good lessons from this, probably in the next 40 years, we won't have such an unfortunate event. After all, both sides still did not shoot at each other. That means these confidence building measures have still played a role, a positive role. Then the second thing I want to talk about is how we probably could coexist in the Indian Ocean, which is seldom discussed. Yeah, I agree with Ambassador Bambwali that we have a severe lack of trust, and this actually is a thing also most recently in India, trying to successfully persuading Sri Lanka to not to let a Chinese ship, Yuan number 5, to berth at the Hambantota port. This is not a secret. This is a bilateral discussion. I hope you would admit that this is a fact. You succeeded, but what for? Chinese ship just go to Hambantota for replenishment, and you would just use your strengths or making use of the difficult time of Sri Lanka to not let the Chinese ship stay there for a while for replenishment. And you did this before when a Chinese submarine docked at Sri Lanka. Then this, if we just talk to the international community, this is about China's cooperation with another sovereign state. And why would you do this? And what would China think if China believes you are doing this? Would this add to our trust? So India, I believe, would consider Indian Ocean very much like India's ocean, but this is not possible. Then I start to think about this question. Believe me, I start to think about this question for the first time in my life. Would China and India have a clash in Indian Ocean? I never thought about this before. Yeah, I always thought about our land border, but this is the first time I think about this issue. And why do I think about this issue? You see, China's interests are now global, including in the Indian Ocean. And there are probably about 1 million Chinese working in the rimland of the Indian Ocean. And China's Belt and Road Initiative goes in that direction. That means we'll have more interest in the Indian Ocean and beyond the Indian Ocean rather than in the Southern Pacific. Yeah, so that means China's cooperation with this country, with this small country in the Indian Ocean, will certainly grow. And then that means we have more interest there. And that means for us to secure this interest, we have to make sure that we have a kind of a military capability to protect these interests. This is not confined to the Indian Ocean. It's about our interests around the globe. Then it invites the question how India would look at this. Yeah, if you believe that this is your exclusive sphere of influence, then China's interest will just clash with yours. But we don't have to be, at loggerheads in the Indian Ocean, because you see, China never tried to interfere, in your territorial water or exclusive economic zone. Actually, the only countries that challenge your exclusive economic zone is the United States, which openly have challenged your unlawful, exclusive economic zone, right? Yeah. So the third question then is a bigger one. Then how we would, place each other in our own national strategy. So to be frank, in the years to come, at least in 10 years to come, I would assume that the international order would become less and less orderly, while China-US relationship will just get more sour. And I personally do not believe that we could maintain very good relationship with India because of all these vexed interest or problems altogether. I believe, and I hope, as one of the founders of Long Alliance, you should know where you should stand. That is to maintain kind of a neutrality. And recently we're seeing some moves of you getting ever closer to the United States. That is fine if you believe that is your interest. But I believe in so doing, you probably lose in your relationship with both China and Russia. And to what extent can you afford that? That is your question. But like it or not, China will just become the strongest country on earth, probably, and definitely one of the strongest neighbor. So is it in your interest to just stop Chinese ships, even replenishment, a third country? You see, the problem with India is that you always have some problem with China in third country. Yeah, be it in the border between China and Bhutan in Bokram, or in Sri Lanka, or in Maldives, right? So I hope you can just think about all these. But at another level, I think many of you have mentioned already, including Wang Huiya, that how much we actually have in common. I understand that you would still maintain that you have great differences in your position in terms of how we look at the Russia-Ukrainian war. I don't believe we are that much different. I believe you just try to make a difference to show that you are different from China. And I believe, yes, there is difference, but the difference just like between two apples, not between one apple and one pear. So that is up to you. If you believe we have great differences, fine. But I believe apart from these problems that I have mentioned, we two countries are still developing countries. And our own way of development in terms of our position on a multiple polarized world is very much the same. So I believe the way China and India would develop actually would represent more the direction of world tomorrow. So let's have some more mutual confidence in each other. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Senior Colonel Jobo. And I think there are many questions that have been raised, and perhaps later our keynote speaker, Ambassador Bambewale, and other Indian professors may also respond to these. Now, let me invite Professor General Mani Chandi. First, we have General Mani Chandi, who will be our second panelist. He is a retired Indian Army officer who brings to the foundation skills of a soldier, an engineer, a counter-terrorist commando, a UN peacekeeper, and a security professional, a former Major General and Inspector General of the Elite National Security Guard. He is an enthusiastic analyst, an articulate speaker, and a prolific writer. Major Chandi, we look forward to your remarks.
Thank you, Zoom. Thank you very much. It's really amazing to talk to you over so much of distance. I'd like to start by saying I'm very honored to speak to all of you and to hear such professional views. Very enlightening, and I really look forward to this interaction. I'd like to start with, what our previous speakers spoke, because I think it's very profound. Ambassador Gautam mentioned very clearly that the situation on the India-China border is reflective of India-China relations. And I think that's a very, very important point. We have two nuclear nations, two armed forces on eyeball-to-eyeball contact, and that's a very serious situation. I liked what Dr. Henry said, and he saw that, two of the most populous countries, two of the most promising economies, and, if we collaborate, we can gain so much more. And I like what Colonel Zhao said. He said that there's been plenty of effort, but it's a very serious situation. Now, in my life, and I'm sure you have also done this SWOT analysis, strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats. It's always easy to see strengths, it's easy to see weaknesses, but I always get confused between opportunities and threats. Because if you look at a threat differently, it can actually be an opportunity. And if you look at an opportunity differently, it can be a threat. And I think that's quite what Ambassador Gautam and Dr. Henry said. Now, if I were to look to convert this threat into an opportunity, I think we have to ask ourselves two questions. And they're very important questions. The government of India was formed after independence in 1947, and the government of the People's Republic of China was formed in 1949. Almost 75 years have passed, but we have not been able to resolve this border. why have we not been able to resolve the dispute on the border is the first question. And I'll try and answer that question, and I'll be glad to hear views of the fellow panelists. The second question is that in the armed forces, we have a saying that if you follow an approach and you don't get success, if you are attacking a feature and you attack on one approach and you're not getting success, Colonel Zhao will point me out, we always adopt a new approach. So is there possibility of a new approach? Well, I think I can think of at least one new approach, and that's the second question, which I'm going to try and answer. Now, over to the first question. Why have we not been able to solve this problem for 75 years? And Colonel Zhao brought out that there has been a lot of effort on the parts of diplomats, efforts on the parts of bureaucrats, but none of the solutions are acceptable to our leaders. And why is it? My suspicion is that we are presenting our leaders with solutions that are very difficult for them to accept. Now, in the armed forces, we follow something called war gaming. And I'm sure Colonel Zhao knows what war games are. It's based on the game theory. So if I convert this particular situation into a game where we have a Chinese team and an Indian team, and the Chinese team has made a map which encompasses some areas which is under occupation of India, and it encompasses some areas which is claimed by India. And India has made a map and says, this is our area, and it includes some areas which is under occupation of China, and includes some areas which is claimed by China. How do you resolve this problem in game theory? Why I'm saying game theory is, let's leave the nationalism out of this and just look at it purely in terms of game theory. Many solutions are possible, but one set of solutions are called as win-lose solutions. Someone's win is someone's loss. And I think the solutions which we are presenting on the border are win-lose. Any solution that we take to our leaders or any solution which you take to your leaders will be, let's give up this and let's take this. And I don't blame our leaders. Those are win-lose situations, and it's always easier for them to say, let's maintain status quo, and that's what's happened for 75 years. So the answer, my answer to the first question is why we've not been able to solve this problem is we're not coming up with imaginative solutions which can be presented as win-win to our leaders. Is it possible to provide a win-win solution to this? And I think in game theory, win-win solutions are possible. There are areas of differing perception. There are areas of dispute. Can we say that areas of differing perception and areas of dispute could be put under the joint administration of India and China? And therefore, when we do produce an area of border area, no one has to lose territory. No one's map has to change. It can be added to both countries. Easier said than done. But is that a possibility of a principle? Which comes to the second question. Is a new approach possible? I think perhaps a new solution could be possible. A new approach could be possible. Wargaming is one way, but when you look at it on ground, it's a very, very difficult situation. And I've served in all these areas, right from the eastern side till the western side. In all the areas, I have physically moved and seen those areas. Is it possible in a first stage that we select one disputed area, we delineate it on map, we demarcate it on ground, we appoint a joint administrative authority with India and China, they take charge of that pocket, and then we withdraw the armies outside the disputed area. If we do it in one and we build confidence, maybe we can build it somewhere else. And in the process, maybe we have a different approach to this problem. Those were my two questions, and those were my suggested answers. But before I conclude, I'd also like to mention, my father was an Air Force officer. He's no more, but he told me that India and China are two old civilizations, at least 5,000 to 6,000 years. The problem came when the British colonialists came and they drew lines, a McMahon line, a Johnson line, and there are other lines as well. But what happened in the 5,000 years before the British came? How did India and China live? We accepted that there was a border area. Our daughters got married from there, and we imported tea from here, and we lived in a border area. So is it possible that we can resolve this problem by replacing these lines with border areas? That's my suggestion. Thank you very much. Thank you, Moon.
Thank you. Thank you so much, General Chandi. I think exactly like thinking about from your perspective, a lack of creative solutions that can actually work, even though both countries have been conducively pursuing dialogue on the issue of border disputes is a very interesting point of view. And let's look forward to our other panelists also bring forward outstanding issues. Next, we have Professor Qian Fang, who is Director of Research Department and Senior Research Fellow at the National Strategy Institute, Tsinghua University. He is also the former Chief of India Bureau, People's Daily, Executive Member of Chinese Association for China South Asian Studies. Professor Qian Fang, the floor is yours.
Thank you. Good afternoon. Thank you. Thank you, Moon. Yes. Thank you, Mr. Chairman, Mr. Dr. Wang Huiyao, and also thanks CCGs for having me. I'm also very glad to meet my old friends, Mr. Ambassador, yes, Professor Konapalli, yes. I would like to take this opportunity to share my views on the current China-India relations. When we talk about the China-India relations now, yes, I think the Gulf conflict in 2020 is very important watershed and hard to avoid. Before the outbreak of the conflict, I think the development trend of the China and the India relations are very positive and upward. We can see, yes, the two informal summits are very groundbreaking, and both in the worldwide and also at the level of the bilateral relations. However, yes, the conflict was very unfortunate and causing a heavy casualties on both sides. This has not only aggravated the complicated the situations in both areas, but also caused a very serious damage to the political mutual trust and also the public opinion basis between the China and India. And that ruined our years of efforts, including ambassadors and Mr. Ambassador's achievements. But I strongly believe that if the conflict did not happen, I think the China-India relations would never have been like this today. Looking back in the past 2 years, the China-India relations, I think, is worse time more than 3 decades. First, the lack of a strategic mutual trust. Second, the lack of the forward momentum. And the third is a lack of top level interactions. Take high level interactions, for example, I think after the Prime Minister Modi's inaugurations, nearly 80 years ago, he has officially visited China 5 times and held 16 times meeting with President Xi. But in the past 2 years, the two leaders have they talked all around the world with different countries' nations leaders, with a phone calls or with a video meeting, but they never met face to face, which I think is very real in the history of China-India relations. And former Minister Jeffrey Shankar believes that India-China relations should abide by the 3 mutuality, that is the mutual respect, the mutual sensitivity, and the mutual interest. And also the Chinese Foreign Minister Wang Yi also put forward the proposals and the principles for developing the bilateral relations. That is to view our bilateral relations from a long-term perspective, and to view our relations, our mutual development from win-win views, and also to participate in the multilateralist process with a cooperative attitudes. Yes, I was very much agree with the two ministers' thinking. Yes, all the principles fully demonstrate that both China and India is full of wisdoms and civilized powers. And some countries do not understand why both China and India has a very strong armies, but used the primitive weapons in the conflict. The truth, I think, is the reason is very simple. Yes, neither countries want see a real war happens. But frankly speaking, I think over the past 2 years, the conflict in the bilateral relations has masked the consistency between the two countries in the international cooperations. Since this year, I think the sharp changes in the international situations have objectively brought opportunities for the improvement of bilateral relations. Now, there are not some positive signs, such as I think the border remains stable and the diplomatic interactions and economical trade exchanges increases. However, we are not optimistic. We need to work together to passionately stabilize China and India relations step by step, and then continue to think how to develop our bilateral relations. Frankly speaking, the GSI, and the GDI, I think, are not the current imminent need. We have so many interests, common interests. Take the economic cooperations as an example. And this has been proved by a large numbers of facts. Last year, China, India has trade the trend, reaching the historical higher, up to nearly 43%, increases, and exceeding across the 1,000 billion yuan for the first time. And this shows our bilateral economic trade cooperations meet the actual needs of the two countries. If it's not of our two countries, we have a highly complementarities between us. How can we explain the great achievements of the China bilateral relations and the China-India economic and trade cooperations over the past 2 decades, several decades? I think the stability of the China and India relations will directly affect the developments and the stability of the two countries. For China's side, India's existence cannot be ignored, whether it is a domestic economic development and maintaining our neighborhood security and stability, or the strategical games between the China and the US. But for India, it is wise to maintain a stability, with China, in both areas, and can conduct the mutually benefit cooperations with China. I think the presence, the COVID-19 has not stopped it, and the conflict between Russia and Ukraine continues, and the prospects of the global economic recovery are still uncertain. Only by seizing these opportunities, seeking the common ground, and enhancing the mutual trust, we can create a favorable, external environment for our development. The two sides should rebuild, consensus, and strengthen cooperations to jointly cope with the global economical, such as global economic recessions. To get the China-India relations back on track. The two sides, as I suggest, can do, but not limited, such as strengthen the cooperations between local provinces and states, and promote the cultural exchanges, and strengthen the exchanges between the think tank and scholars, and enhance the public awareness, of each other. and strengthen the political cooperations, such as in the field of the global climate change. During the past 2,000 years of our bilateral exchanges, peace and friendship has been the norm. Yes. Now, I remember the Chinese leaders repeatedly said China and India, yes, enjoy 99% of the friendship. Yes, but the conflict between the two countries is very short, less than less than 1%. So even the conflict, such as the 1962 border conflict, has turned the swords into plowshares. We scholars, thinkers, should not only focus on differences but ignore the cooperation. I think we have opportunity, yes, to find, yes, solutions to mutual satisfaction and serve the common interests and resolve the differences. Meanwhile, both governments need to handle the bilateral relations with a larger mind as emerging big powers, while we need to carefully deal with the domestic nationalism voices to avoid their policy being left. However, I think the size of our big countries lies not only in its ambition, but also in its broader mind and pattern. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Professor Chen Fang. I'll briefly just mention a few points you highlighted, including the fact that actually, when we look at historically the relations between China and India, this is indeed a very small percentage. And it is so important to think about the potential gains mutually in order to further incentivize the willingness and capacity to cooperate in a constructive way. So thank you so much for your Dr. Shrikant Kandapalli, our fourth speaker, who is professor in Chinese studies at Jawaharlal Nehru University. He's also an honorary fellow at the Institute of Chinese Studies, Delhi, and research associate at Center for Chinese Studies. Professor Kandapalli has many very impressive titles and roles. He studied Chinese at the Beijing Language and Culture University as well, many years ago. He was a visiting professor at National Chengchi University, and he has presented several research papers and is extensively published internationally and has presented in conferences in India, China, Japan, Singapore, and many other countries. So Professor Kandapalli, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much. Very good afternoon to all of you. And thank you, Zoom, for the invite. And we are supposed to discuss the economic interdependence between India and China. And I carefully listened to the previous speakers. There is more of geopolitics than economic interdependence in this. So I think let me focus on this aspect and also, of course, bring in geopolitics, because as Ambassador Bombawala mentioned, there are certain basic lines in bilateral relations that need to be respected. Otherwise, we still will be groping in the dark. So let me say that liberal institutionalists coined this word economic interdependence, like Robert Keohane and Joseph Nye and others. So one of the fundamental aspects of economic interdependence, our topic today, include A and B trading with each other, investing in each other, and interacting with each other in people-to-people contacts, tourism, and so on. And this leads to a kind of understanding between the two. Somebody mentioned trust, building trust. In other words, A and B enhancing trust. And that influences the political leadership to avoid skirmishes, avoid security-related problems. So Keohane and Nye articulated this, and to a large extent during globalization, which is what the Center for China and Globalization is doing, During this globalization process, that would lead to a kind of understanding, and we avoid war, we avoid conflict, we avoid disturbances in the system. So liberal institutionalists influence has spread, especially in the last, say, 2-3 decades, and this has been one of the key momentum in the history in recent times. So that is one. So FDI, foreign direct investment, trade, WTO entry, China entered in 2001, which basically mentions about tariff reductions, most favored nation treatment given to countries. A gives MFN to B and B gives to A, similar processes, and that's where the economic interdependence and people-to-people contact, meaning tourism, would be substantially increased. 2 years ago, prior to COVID-19, China had about 180 million tourists going abroad. And of course, because of border controls and quarantine procedures and the other, what China mentions as dynamic zero COVID policies, tourism has come down in China and other parts of the world. So this is supposed to influence the political leadership at all levels. And so that is, we can bring in the Wuhan informal summit meeting, the Chennai Connect between Prime Minister Modi and President Xi. So that is supposed to lead to a lot of interdependence. So that is, so let us look at India, China. What is the status of interdependence between the two? Let me argue that India-China interdependence has been very, very constricted for various reasons, which I would just outline. But first, the models of economic development. In India, we have now ease of doing business has increased by 3 times. We jumped up the scale, and FDI in India has increased substantially. In fact, last 2-3 years, FDI into India, foreign direct investment, has increased to nearly 3rd position in the global ranking on FDI flows. Secondly, exports have increased last 2 years, and we intend to increase that to about $700-800 billion, as against $6 trillion by China's exports and imports in the GDP of China. The third is, of course, we have launched several campaigns like Digital India, Skill India, Atmanirbharta campaign, that is self-sufficiency, and a host of other things like Sagarmala, Made in India, Make in India policy. China had the Made in China 2025. China also has many of these programs already put in place. So, but specific reforms included supply side economic reforms in China, and of course the domestic consumption under the 13th 5-year plan and 14th 5-year plan. So between India and China, India extended the MFN status to China in 1984, most favored nation treatment, and double taxation agreement was signed in 94, and we had the also agreement on the Bangkok agreement has also been accepted. Tariff has been reduced, 188 products from China and 217 more than what China could offer to India, 217 products from India. These were the tariff reduction. During the visits by Rajiv Gandhi, Li Keqiang, Xi Jinping, Modi, in all these, we enhanced the economic interdependence, at least in statements. Why I'm mentioning this is, when we look at, we only have a restricted economic interdependence between China and India. For example, we have the special economic dialogues conducted between the NDRC in China and the Niti Aayog now, Planning Commission before. And we had a financial dialogue a steel dialogue, iron and steel dialogue, and renminbi rupee exchange, or an understanding between the two. And in the BRICS and others, we try to do the local currency exchange, which has now become more intensified. So with all this, the trade increased substantially. As other speakers have mentioned, we have $120 billion. Dr. Wang mentioned about these figures. In fact, a 2005 deadline for $100 billion by 2010 has only been reached in 2021, despite COVID and other supply chain disruptions. So trade increased, that is good. But what India realized is trade is skewed in China's favor, and China had shown restriction on the Indian products entry, like IT software, pharmaceuticals, or other products. So India is one of the manufacturing centers. For example, the United Nations bodies mentioned India is the 6th largest manufacturing country, and today is diversifying its exports. But we see a great wall in China in terms of these exports to China, especially in IT software and pharmaceutical products. So whatever be the Chinese story, reason about this, there is an asymmetric interdependence. And increasingly, there are calls within India that we lost $1.2 trillion in trade deficits. If Trump can impose tariffs on China in January 2018, and the tariff wars really disturbed the whole trading system globally, India has not yet initiated any tariff wars, but there is a serious thinking in India that the asymmetric interdependence is in favor of China, not in favor of India. So the next steps would be obviously the decoupling process, and that intensified with the Galwan crisis in June 2020. And that is where the geopolitics comes in economic interdependence. So that is where probably we will see some steps here. The third aspect of economic interdependence is investments. Now, for a $17 trillion GDP country like China, the total Chinese investments in India are $8.2 billion. Chinese investments in Pakistan are $52 billion. But for a country which is growing at 8% this year, the total Chinese investments is $8.2 billion, as Ambassador Sun Weidong has mentioned recently. So investments have not really gone up by China, although it boasts of the second largest economy in the world. So that is where we have also while India extended the MFN statement, we have seen recently the RCEP. India did not join the RCEP primarily because China did not abide by the guiding principles on comprehensive, balanced, and equitable distribution in the RCEP format, Regional Comprehensive Economic Partnership format, especially on equity and balance in trade, in components, tariffs, and finally on the impact on livelihood. This is an issue during the 80s China raised, but today it is silent. Also in terms of the tariff differential charges and customs duties and the federal character of the Indian system in terms of the investments. So India did not join the RCEP, and we saw Le Yucheng, the then vice foreign minister, who is now being relegated to look after radio and TV programs, after his speech in Remintashwe on the limits to partnership between China and Russia. He mentioned that the RCEP countries should go without India's participation. That was a very caustic comment that he made on that. So let me summarize this by saying that we have only limited economic interdependence. And with Galwan, the fault lines have further increased in economic interdependence. Let me also touch upon why economic interdependence is problematic with China. For instance, China banned the rare earth metals with Japan, although China, Japan have intensive economic interdependence in many fields. However, suddenly China banned the rare earth metals in early 2000s. Of course, it created opportunities for India to export rare earth metals to Japan, and Japan-India relations improvised now. We also saw when South Korea deployed the Terminal High Altitude Air Defense System, THAAD system, China put restrictions on the Chinese tourists going to Jeju Islands or to other places. So in other words, China weaponized tourism vis-a-vis South Korea. And we have also seen when Tsai Ing-wen won the elections in Taiwan, the Chinese tourist visits to Taiwan have been curtailed substantially, unlike during Ma Ying-jeou's term in Taiwan. We also see this recently. India had put restrictions on Xiaomi, Vivo, Oppo, because they have money laundered $3.7 billion to China or to other places. And so there are investigations now on these Chinese companies. Economic interdependence comes with, of course, rule of law and other aspects. And so that is where we saw. And this is not, Colonel Chow mentioned about the Yuan Wang visit to the Indian Ocean. We have genuine concerns on this because it is going to track the whole of the Indian Ocean region. And we saw the Maritime Silk Road and other also have several weaponization programs. And so we have concerns. Yuan Wang comes under the PLA Strategic Support Force. It is not a tourist boat. It is a military vessel with dual use technologies and others. We have concerns on Indian Ocean. If you are proposing that China should come to the Indian Ocean, in diplomacy, reciprocity is important. If this is a formal proposal from Colonel Chow, then India would propose to go to the South China Sea as a reciprocal gesture, which is also part of the diplomatic practice. India would also send the dual use ships to the South China Sea, like Yuan Wang 5 or others. And possibly we will see the Chinese response on that aspect. So what I was trying to argue here is we have a very limited economic interdependence. And if we have to cross the bridge, as Ambassador Bombawale mentioned, we had concerns on what happened on June 15th night on 2020, and that needs to be taken care of. We have seen China behaving in the same manner when it comes to the rare earth metals, the THAAD system, now Taiwan, the military exercises and others that it had mobilized. So we also have similar concerns when it comes to the state-to-state relations. But please remember, India supported China in the WTO. India supported China on the climate change issues. In G20, in various other fora. So the coexistence and interdependence is a two-way flow. And India suggests that first, as Dr. Jaishankar mentioned, unless until peace and tranquility prevails on the border, we will not have bilateral relations expanded. So I think the signaling to China has been given both at the state-to-state level and also at the track 1.5 and track 2 levels and across the board. If China wants economic interdependence to be increased, I think China needs to follow those rules of the game as well. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Professor Kondapalli. I think the analysis, especially the fact from your perspective that the economic interdependence, the scale does not in and of itself reflect deepening relations, is interesting, insightful. And with this, actually, we have about 8 minutes left for our event. So I know that perhaps all of our panelists would want maybe a minute or so to respond. If we can have literally 1 minute responses, and then after that, okay, so first, Ambassador Bambewale. Okay, excellent. Ambassador, I will also add, if we have questions from the audience. So maybe I can quickly ask you the questions, and then you can wrap up, and then we move on to Dr. Wang. Questions for him, and then wrap up. That way we can try and finish in time. Okay, so the first question is, you mentioned, these are from the Global Times. The first question, you mentioned China and India need to work hard to repair the trust after the incident at the border 2020. Could you give us some examples on which sectors the two countries can work together? And do you think India will cooperate with the US's Indo-Pacific strategy to increase its military presence at the borders to contain China? The second is, China's foreign ministry on Tuesday urged the Indian government to provide a fair and non-discriminatory environment for Chinese firms after reports of India mulling a ban on Chinese smartphone makers' sale of cheaper devices in India, a move Chinese experts say is politically charged. What are your thoughts on this? So the questions, and Ambassador Bambewale,
Sure.
Are you with us?
Sure.
Yes, please.
Yeah, I'm with you, Zoon, with the United States, with Japan, with France, with Germany, with the UK. But the reason why we are doing this is because China has been very aggressive, not just in the South China Sea and the Indian Ocean, as Professor Kondapalli said, but also on the India-China border. And I think it is but natural that, Chinese actions since 2020 have actually driven India into the arms of the United States. And hence, I would blame Chinese decisions, including military decisions, for this fact. That's point number one. Point number two is, I think the simplest way to build trust between India and China will be to restore the status quo ante in the western sector of the India-China border. Please restore the status quo as it existed before April of 2020. And I think that it will be a very good confidence building measure between the two countries. And finally, on the question of the Quad and working with the United States, I think I have already made myself very clear. I think it is, China's aggression and aggressive activities in the South China Sea, on the India-China border, near and around the Senkaku Islands, which is leading many of us in the world to believe that the rise of China may not be so peaceful. And you will have to do something about that for the rest of the world to believe that the rise of China is indeed going to be peaceful. I'll stop there, Zoom.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Ambassador. And I think now we have about 4 minutes. We can go like a minute or two over time. I would like to maybe invite, if any of the panelists, so Senior Colonel Chobo, please.
Yeah.
Maybe.
Very quickly. Yeah, regarding Major General Chandy's point of view, very interesting. But I think you have almost reached there, but you stopped anyway. In fact, China's point of view is just to have kind of a mutual understanding and a mutual accommodation. By mutual accommodation, that essentially means a swap of land. If you just talk about all these being necessary, they probably can do it. If there is a political will in India, which is never found anyway, then could we just select one area for its demonstration? That actually was talking about the so-called early harvest, the Sikkim's section in the middle section, but still we failed. So we tried all this. Then about 3 times point about China's Yuan-15, the ship. I don't believe that the Chinese ship is there just to track all the activities of India. At least you can hardly prove that, because a ship like that can actually do a lot of things. Primarily, it was designed to monitor, to provide more precision guided information for satellites and our spaceships. That was the main purpose. If you just Google, the function of the ship. So it's not there just for India. And you can hardly prove that if we didn't open the door to show you what we're doing, right? And if you just want to go to South China Sea to do that, actually you are most welcome. Why? Because if you read India's media is always concerned with Chinese ships in Indian Ocean. And the Chinese media seldom talk about Indian ships in the South China Sea or in the Pacific Ocean. So that's the difference. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Senior Colonel Zhou Bo. If any other panelists would like to add a minute or two, any remarks? Okay, then Dr. Henry Hoya Wang, I have a question for you, which has been shared by Senior International Editor at CGTN, Abhishek Paya, who is Indian. So his question is for you that there's a lot of focus on the differences that China and India have. And in that, what is lost is the many common interests that the two Asian countries, as the two most populous and two largest developing economies, also have. How can the conversations be channelized to highlight on these commonalities and how the two nations could collaborate? So this question, your remarks, and a concluding note.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you, Zoom, and thanks for the question, and also all the discussion we have so far. Thanks for that. I think that regarding this question first, I would say that it is missing. It is indeed missing that in the narrative of this bilateral relations, two our largest developing country, two our largest most populous country in this part of the world, and Asian is actually going to be the epicenter for the next half a century, and are going to take the lead in the world economy. So I think there's every reason for both China and China and India to work together for the sake of our almost 3 billion people that we all have, and also for the stability of the region. So I think I understand there are concerns about China, but China never, in the history of several thousand years, never colonized any place and never actually big clash with any other countries. So I think we should trust that the culture of China is really seeking peace and coexistence. So that's, I think, we should really work on. And the second, I think that India is still growing very fast, as our colleague mentioned. There's almost 8% growth. That's really admirable in such a pandemic time. So also India is very young. I mean, India is probably 20-some years old averagely, but China is almost 40. So there's a lot of things that we can work together and complementary so much. What China has experienced, a lot can be amplified in India. So there's enormous opportunities to work together if we felt that there's a common interest for the almost 3 billion people in this part of the world. Thirdly, and also finally, I think that India is well known for its non-aligned movement and not taking sides, and that has been a long tradition. So we hope that India can continue to do that. I've been talking to some Indian friends. They say, okay, they are thinking about Quad. They are thinking about IP only in economic terms, not in the military or security terms. So let's hopefully strengthen that, and let's make those Quad and the IPAF as economic terms. Even China can be part of that. It's really ironic. IPF for the largest economic framework for the region. You don't have the largest economy in the region to join that. That's ridiculous. So it doesn't make sense. So I really hope that India and China can work on that together. And also we would really welcome India to join RCEP. I mean, there are some issues. Let's talk about. Let's discuss about, and also welcome India to. China applied for DIPA, the digital economy, and also maybe India could be a part of that. Let's jointly promote that together. And also, let's make also the BRICS some kind of free trade arrangement. Let's make SCO some kind of more economically attached So India and China and both can take some lead on that. So I think we should have FTA between our two countries and also address the imbalance that we're having. So there's many angles we can talk about. So in that sense, if we talk more about working together, talk more about for the sake of the region, for those 3 billion people, that we will probably, you will see out of the balance, the things we're controverted about little piece of land is really doesn't make much sense. So let's really think about big pictures, think about big directions, think about the region and the prosperity for the world. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Dr. Wang. Thank you also Ambassador Bambewale, Senior Colonel Chobo, General Chandi, Professor Chien Fang, and also Professor Kundapali. I would also like to thank obviously our partners, Synergia Foundation. I think today's conversation has really been insightful and intuitive. We have many people following this online. China and India relations are obviously important for 3 billion people in the world, but also important for Asia, for the global South at large, and for the world at large as well. So tough conversations also need to be had. Conflicts need to be addressed, understood, and resolved. The possible gains need to be studied and understood well, so that we have an incentive to move towards resolving these conflicts creatively and proactively. So with that, towards the spirit of win-win cooperation, I hope that all of our experts today can agree to a round 2 very soon. I think that would be very fruitful, and we can continue the dialogue over there. So thank you once again to our partners, participants, and our audience. Goodbye for now. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye-bye.